Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight on January 6th, where I know most of us, or a lot of us, just got back to work, and now we're here tonight. So thanks for coming. Can y'all hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, cool. I'm Renee Muski's Director of Operations, MusicPortland and MusicOregon. Most of you probably already know me. I just wanted to say, hold our glasses up really quick and say, Happy New Year, y'all. Thank you. Thank you. So I don't have a whole lot to say today. I just wanted to welcome in the new year with y'all. I'm glad we're just kind of getting cozy and talking and stuff. But I'm really excited to have OG here tonight to talk about MusicOregon's Music Business Incubator program and what he's done with it last year, and have Olivia here, and I'm not sure, is there anyone else coming out tonight? Okay, cool. To talk about the business that she worked on under the program. So I'm going to let him go ahead and talk about the program and then have Olivia take over. So come on up.
How's everybody doing? Everybody good? Good. Good to see everybody in this new year. And the Music Business Incubator program. I kind of feel like, Mir, this all started with you. So how about you give me the alley-oop? Yeah, this doesn't happen without Mir. So I'm going to let you want to do an introduction to how we got to putting the program together?
So we did, in 2023, we did Commercial Music Census statewide. And Sherry Jameson, put your hand up in the air, took that in her teeth because we knew that data is what we needed to actually tell our story. And one of the stories that became clear, besides the fact that we're a $3.8 billion industry in the state that employs more people than cannabis, fishing, or logging, that's commercial music, we also determined that less than 1% of the business owners, the people not just performing, but the people in music businesses and enterprises were women of color. And it's a real gap, that's a problem. And so OG and I started talking, and I started chasing money, and we got some money, and I alley-ooped it to you.
Well, there it is. So in connection with that, I have a company called Leadertainment. And Leadertainment was developed for the purpose of elevating artists and business entrepreneurs, their brands, as it relates to leadership. We know there's a lot of resources out there available to people that are trying to get into business, and there's a lot of resources online with YouTube. You go on YouTube and find all kinds of, information about how to start a business. Where Leadertainment, the approach that I wanted to have is that the many years that I've been both in nonprofit world as well as for-profit and running, a few businesses of my own, my experience was, particularly with people that look like me, was that the resources or the information might have been out there, but there were no programs that were helping build strong character brands. And I think it was a void there, and I still think there's a huge void, particularly as I've been running Leadertainment for the last couple of years. I've been finding more and more companies and entrepreneurs and artists and of all backgrounds and genres and everything, that they were noticing that, particularly after the pandemic, where people were coming out of this emotional dump, really, and trying to get their lives emotionally stable and reconnected back to the human experience. One of the things I noticed is that there was a disruption, that there were people, it was becoming harder and harder for people to connect and manage emotions in life, but they had these aspirations and careers that they had and great vision that they wanted to have. So what I wanted to do with Leadertainment is said, okay, how can you both elevate and strengthen people's visions and help them get, clarity and strategic plans and all those things, at the same time helping them develop personally, where their character, strong integrity, dealing with the issues that oftentimes, particularly in our community, but I've seen it in a lot of communities, that these things over here personally come and disrupt the vision. So how do you teach that and how do you coach that simultaneously? So that was the excitement I had about the Music Business Incubator program from the beginning. Here was a chance that I get to work with some incredible women that have amazing visions about what they want to do, but not necessarily knowing how to activate it or execute it, both on a professional level as well as a personal development level. And so for some months, we spent time digging in.
We did.
Digging in. And so I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to let DJ Ashay, or Olivia, a.k.a. DJ Ashay, talk a little bit about her experience during that whole process, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah. Thank y'all for having me, first off, for the vision that y'all had bringing this to life, even before it even formed, for being boots on the ground. I know so many of y'all here are involved in things beyond just this program, but that are so essential to the music community in Portland, so thank you for that. We had, was it 6 months almost?
Yeah.
6 months together. And I know OG1 just from being in the community, which I think speaks volumes to who he is and how he shows up, and just his desire to mentor people for people, and then whatever talents they have just kind of get brought into that. So thank you, OG, for having me and just being who you are. My name is Olivia. I do go by DJ Ashay, and I am a Portland DJ. I moved here about 2 years ago, a little bit from Seattle, a little bit from Chicago, but my wife is from Portland, and so we settled back here. And when we moved here, we came in 2017, long story short. When we came back to really settle here, one of the things I was really excited about, and that my wife and I kind of do outside of our music world, is support women in their wellness. So that's looked so many different ways in terms of spiritual care, self-care, realizing and being open and vulnerable where it's safe about our sexuality. And I was talking about this earlier. I grew up in a really constricted Black church space. You couldn't be gay, you couldn't listen to music that didn't have God in it, and don't have sex before you get married. Those were the tenets of the Christianity that I grew up in. Clearly, I've married to a woman, and I DJ all sorts of music, cuss words and not. But one of the things that I found,
Rebel.
I know. But I have a feeling a lot of y'all are here, so I think I'm in good company. At least I know Jess is, from what I've heard. But what I found as I grew older, you kind of had that pendulum swing in life where you're okay, I want nothing to do with whatever it is that I grew up with. And then, you kind of come back and find that middle ground. And music was one of the ways that I found that. And so it's been really beautiful to be able to exercise that in my DJ career. And I've spent a lot of time in venues in Portland and being with friends and creating and being a part of the visions they create. And one of the things that I really felt was missing was a space run by women that empowered women as it relates to their sexuality. And so the program that I wanted and pitched and developed in the incubator program was an adult entertainment venue called Eden. And if you know anything about the Bible, which you really don't need to know a whole lot. There's so many good sacred texts. I don't think it's the one. But there's this story about, in the book Genesis, which is the first book, about the Garden of Eden being the place where like people encountered shame, right? Because they were in sin, but also the place where like they were naked, and before they encountered that sin, like there was no shame around their sexuality. So I really began to dive into this vision of what it would look like to have a adult entertainment venue run by a woman that kind of removes that shame aspect that women often carry when we're doing burlesque, when we're moving, when we're in spaces where we feel like we're being watched. So what would it look like to create a venue that empowers women? And so that's what I did. We got to spend 6 weeks really fleshing out that venue, or that idea in the form of a venue. And it became more than just like a venue, right? We're like, okay, what could there be? Soaking tubs that bring in revenue in the daytime. So imagine like Tiny Desk, because we want there to be live music, meets like Soho House, right? The class and the glamour. But then you also have like Knot Springs. Like, where does that exist? Where can all of those intersections live? And keep Portland weird. Portland seems like the perfect place to have a music venue that does all of those things. And so for 6 months, I got to really dive in. What does it look like to run a venue? How much alcohol sales do you need, right? Like, what size of space? What kind of permits are going to be required? Can I tap into things like blockchain to figure out how to integrate these like different components of business and idea? And that's kind of that's kind of like a big, small picture of what we did in terms of the business piece. But everything we did with business was accompanied by, who are you? How does this brand come from who you are? And I think, hopefully, from a little bit of my story, the church, I have a really big nonprofit background as well. I daylight as an attorney sometimes. And so like all these things kind of like coming together to create what was Eden, which was really like became a part of who I was. And OG1 was really pivotal in making sure that we weren't just doing something to be doing it, but that it was like a heart project and a representation of who you are, and always questioning and analyzing and thinking deeply about that.
Yes, and so that's where when I talk about the character brand, as they were developing their visions, my approach has always been, you are the business. You are the business at the very foundation. We know the principles of foundation. You are as strong as your foundation. You can build a whole bunch of things and nice and pretty things on top of a foundation that's weak, but what ends up happening, the right pressure comes, it folds. So at the foundation, my challenge to them was, okay, so if you want to have this music venue that has these different components to it, that from a vision standpoint, I mean, and her deck was just crazy. Like, it was really visually attractive and sexy and wholesome and spiritual.
Right, never thought
it was all those things combined. So my job during the process was, well, how does this align with who you are as a person? So when you step out and talk about things, you don't have to turn anything on. You just show up who you are. And how does that translate in how your conversations go when you walk out your front door, understanding that you are your brand, whether it's going to the grocery store, whether it's every post on social media, your conversations, all of those to streamline and align with who you say you are and what you represent. And so a lot of that process is digging through some of the stuff that, again, from a cultural standpoint, and this goes beyond just, black and brown people, just in our society, period. We're so driven by getting the bottom line that we don't take a lot of time to stop and process and say, how am I showing up as me? So I don't have to turn something on or off. When I show up, it's like, no, what you see is how it translates in how I handle business, how I deal with people. Because at the end of the day, all these transactions are going to boil down to someone you're going to have to partner with. Mm-hmm. You have to have some type of relationship with, whether it's business or personal. Someone's going to make a decision to give that loan or not. All these components. So if you break it down to the very foundation, people 9 times out of 10, outside of making sure your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed, they're going to look at who is the person am I dealing with, and do I trust that they have the ability to follow through on this vision that they're wanting me to invest in or to support in the back. And so, again, doing this process the whole time is making sure that as they're developing their plans, and I brought in business professionals. Mm-hmm. I brought in business professionals, both from the industry, everything from artists who are making, 6 figures and above doing their craft as business entrepreneurs, all the way to people that are doing artist brokering and venue relationships and building from different regions. Some of our partners included the Recording Academy, the Pacific Northwest chapter. A lot of it was utilizing my relationship currency.
And he has a lot of relationship currency.
Relationship currency, because we didn't have a big budget. We worked, it's like, running $1 million program on a shoestring budget. But, I think the work was important enough, and the women that, decided, I've learned a lot from this process, because even though I've engaged in interactions with a lot of the women that are in the program, getting to know them on a deeper level and what their dreams and visions are and how important it is to them was a great eye-opener for me. And also even just in the research and talking to other women in other cities and regions about the presence of women in the industry, period. It was sad. It was sad to me, really sad to hear that a lot of times women have to take the back, seat to positions and particularly surrounding ownership, because industry has not elevated them to the point where they walk in spaces and feel like I belong here just as much as my male counterparts do. So things like Aspen, part of her vision was being able to have a recording studio. But how many recording studios do you know that's owned and operated by women? And again, we're not just talking about black and brown, just talking about period. And so I know one of the questions that was asked of me during this process, well, why didn't you have a woman lead this? And I said, well, I think my approach is pretty unique as it relates to leadertainment, but I thought it was very important that a man took a position of supporting women in their visions, because in elevating their voices, because I think the narrative a lot of times is us against them, and I wanted to make sure that these women understood that you had men that truly, without any hidden agenda, really wanted them to win, both in their personal lives as well as their professional lives. So, yeah. And unfortunately, some of the other ladies couldn't make it. I have one that just recovering from knee surgery, so she got her leg up with tubes all in the knee.
Can you describe what some of the other projects were?
Yeah, so Aspen is, again, like I mentioned earlier, wants to own and operate a studio, recording studio. And I've connected her both with some of the local engineers, like Tony Ozier, who is a great engineer that works with the Bodecker Foundation. as well as Amy Dragon. So being able to partner with another woman, I felt was important as well. And so again, part of this process is connecting the ladies with other people that are in the fields that they desire to be in, the spaces they like to be in, and just to, again, to rub shoulders and get the knowledge and wisdom that they're seeking from a more hands-on, realistic standpoint. Also with Aspen, her being a DJ as well, being that, the plus is because I'm a DJ and I know a lot about, the importance of how you brand yourself as a DJ and how do you go from being the DJ that just gets gigs as opposed to the DJ that shows up as a business entity. And simple things like, okay, hey, it's one thing if I showed up as David Jackson to the Blazers, aka DJ LG1, and I get a check and it comes to David Jackson versus it comes from, they write the check to One God Productions. The narrative feels different. So being able to educate them and share that kind of information and say, okay, stop showing up as a local artist and show up as a business in these spaces, and kind of taking them through the process of what that looks like for them. MusicOregon is I've worked with her during Hip Hop Week because she has a whole movement called Meet the Plug, and it's partnering artists with industry professionals. She's also well known in the cannabis industry, and she kind of leveraged her influence in that market to provide platforms for artists to come and perform and connect with producers and influencers outside of just the Portland market. So her approach was really, how does she elevate that? And the official title end up, after we kind of researching, what does that mean? Management? Does that mean, what is it that you want to really zero in on? And it's centered around artist brokering. And being that liaison between when an artist is trying to build their brand and then connecting them with whatever direction they want to go. If they want to go the independent route, okay, well, connecting them to those resources and those outlets, whether it's from a performance standpoint or whether it's from a development, standpoint. So that was MusicOregon's focus. And Magic 9, the amazing Magic 9, who is an artist here. I think Magic is out of Chicago.
Yeah, she
originally,
is.
Out of Chicago, but really has been, heavy on the scene here in Portland. And again, helping her develop a business plan that took into account both learning how to leverage her brand as an artist to be able to leverage that into the work that she wants to do in the community for women and empowering women. So how do you establish yourself and get your brand strong enough as an artist so when you step in the rooms you speak, it sounds differently than I'm just a person out here hustling, trying to, get some stuff done. When you step in those business sector, there's a certain language that's different than when you're on the street, and so being able to, again, help her structure a company and a brand in such a way and a vision so she can be more clear about, okay, here's the steps I really need to take, as opposed to, taking again from vision to execution. And so, yeah. That's pretty much it. One of the things I will say also during this process, and it's one thing that I definitely have been a big advocate for when I find myself in rooms for donors, is conversations I look forward to with people that are, the decision makers on grants. And I want to leave you with this. I think the conversation or the language within nonprofit needs to change. I think, we're passionate about the work that's being done, but I think if we change the language in certain things, it will change the narrative. So, as an example, I was talking to someone today. I said, I think we should stop using the word donation.
Investment.
You see the difference? When I walk into a business meeting and I say, hey, I want you to invest versus, hey, can you donate? It sounds different. The value, the perceived value is different. And I think, that's been, kind of the thing I've been really heavy advocating for. And we did whatever we could do. And I applaud Mira. Mira, anybody that knows Mira, Mira goes to bat 1,000. And she's going to get every penny, dime that she can get. And so I applaud her. But this conversation I had with her, I said, well, understand, when I talk to some of these donors, and if they're talking about really wanting to make an impact, we need to talk the conversation of investment and not just throwing something that you can check a box off, because I think the people that we serve deserve better. And so, do you have anything else you want to say? Add to that?
I think the only thing I would add is just again reiterating why leadertainment is so important, because to have the conversation or ask someone to invest, you have to believe that your idea is worth investing in. So I think it's also changing the demeanor of how artists approach their own work, the way they believe in it, and again, like you said, the way they show up. It's like, I'm worth an investment, and so is this idea, and so is the art that I'm making, because it's a contribution to the community in a very tangible way that matters. Like, imagine if we didn't have music. That'd be crazy, right? So I just wanted to make that connection.
And the numbers don't lie. Yes. Any questions? Any questions? Comments? Anything? Yes.
Is Eden an active project? Is it?
It's an active project, but it's not, you can't go to Eden yet. There are no doors that are open. I know. It would be impressive. I think I think this program was also good. It's like, you have this big vision and, okay, here are some of the on-the-ground realities of what it takes to open up and sustain a venue. And after COVID and what we just know about the Portland market, it's not just a drop in the bucket. It's a real lifetime, not lifetime if you don't do it for a lifetime, but a real commitment for whatever period of time you really do it in. And so I think I was talking to Mira just about me being, it's all or nothing. I'm like, I want the venue that has the stage that I want, that has the room for the soaking tubs, that has the upstairs, the downstairs, the VIP, like all of it. And it's like, okay, can we start with just executing what it looks like to have one show on one night 3 times a month with the band and the women dancers and the patrons and making that experience? So right now I'm wrestling with what that looks like, what's the right venue, the setup, the breakdown, the people, the team. I think y'all know, if you're in any type of nonprofit job or otherwise, the team makes all the difference. So I have a beautiful business plan, and now we're I'm in the stage of, okay, what does it look like to start implementing piece by piece?
Yeah, and just to add to that, one of the important components was to prepare them with a business plan. Not that we had the capital to say, okay, now we got, $500,000 to dump on your project.
That's next. That's the next round.
Yeah, we work on that. But right then, but being able to have all those components there and ready to go. So when opportunity presents itself, you don't have to, as we say in the neighborhood, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the accomplishment of this first trial period of the Music Business Incubator program, is what does it look like to have them prepared, and as this builds, if it's going to grow, being able to again educate investors and saying, okay, hey, let's not talk about this wanting to make an impact and all that stuff. Put your money where your mouth is, and that's just like you would do if you was investing in some property. Guess what? This just happens to be people. Mm-hmm. So either do it or stop talking about it, and let's make some things happen. We'll have the preparation on this side of it, We just need you to step up to the table if that's going to happen. Yes.
So I was just curious about, I mean, obviously, I know any small business, I mean, it's, building blocks, building blocks, building blocks. But it seems to me, having gone through the Business Incubator program and spent the time to build, building a small business plan, has there been any outreach or any interest from, say, any banks, any lending institutions, any sort of angel investor groups or whatever who are watching this or aware of this and saying, this is interesting, we'd like to know more? Because you're right, I mean, you can do all the work, but somewhere you've got to get somebody who's ready to open up the, bank vault, so to speak,
Right.
and put it out there.
Yes, and so that comes again with those components of, okay, how do you build this program overall? So like say for while I'm doing coaching and helping them develop these things, having a team that their job is to go make the connection to the bank. I mean, we made some connections with like the Black Business.
And the Black Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, Black Chamber of Commerce, and which runs programs. Forgot the women organization. Yes, it's a organization. My mind is going blank, but they help women who are trying to start businesses, period. Help them go through the process. So, but part of this, again, process is dealing with when you run into situations where things should be professional versus the reality of you have people that are in positions. And without putting any organization on blast, I was able to teach a lesson that when you walk outside of your door and how you carry yourself and how you deal with people can directly impact the business that you're trying to do. Because if you go and sleep with that girl's boyfriend and she just happens to be in a position at an organization to approve or not approve, it didn't matter how good your business plan was. That person is in an emotional position to say hell to the no. And we ran into not exactly that scenario, No, none of our ladies did any of that, but just there was some conflict things that weren't resolved, and we just happened to run into someone that was in an organization that decided they didn't want to help. Not because the program wasn't great, it made sense. But then when they saw that someone was in the program that they didn't like, so how do you coach? Now you see why I coach organizations as well. It's like, okay, hey, how can you have someone in a position who doesn't have emotional maturity in knowing how to process and manage emotions when you run into situations like that where you can continue to do the job you're responsible for without now you're potentially impacting someone's life because you have a feeling. And so again, equipping these ladies with that type of information so now when they walk into spaces and they're able to discern the difference between someone that is saying no because it just doesn't meet the requirement versus someone has a character or integrity issue. And how do you handle those things? That makes sense? Yes.
Do you have any particular area in Portland?
Yeah.
Location and how big?
I was thinking, so I'm one of those people who drives around, or when I'm driving around, I'm like, oh, look, there's for lease, there's for sale, there's for signs. So I had a conversation with a realtor about it's on Alberta, right across from Barcala. I can't remember what it's called, but it's on Alberta, right across from Barcala, and we talked through the whole thing, what it would look like, how much revenue I would need to make, what the landowner would want to see in the bank before I was able to get the property X, Y, and Z. So that was one option. And then I was talking to her, she was like, but what about outside of Portland? Especially because of the size of the venue that I want. And so that's conversation as well. So we talked about, if you're familiar with, Yoshida has an estate that's in Troutdale. I live in Corbett, so I spend a lot of time over on that side of town. There's a beautiful estate. It was for sale. When I tell you I'm a big dreamer, I'm like, I want that $2 million property with 6 buildings and a waterfall.
That's right.
So it's not for sale right now, but I have an inkling that maybe it will go for sale later on. So I've talked about that kind of property, but then again, it's really about, for example, Yoshida, it's about $3,000 per month just for the landscaping, right? So then again, it's like, do I need to tie myself to that type of, payment every month? And I haven't even paid people yet to be in the business. So I'm really in this conundrum about scale and where to start. Does it make sense just to go to Alberta Abbey and be like, hey, I have this idea, can I run this once a month? And they have an amazing executive director who already has a building and people and staff and a bar and multiple levels, so that's kind of my roundabout way about how I've been thinking about
The
venue.
difference between having to buy or lease
Or lease, exactly.
and the rent.
And the rent. I really do have a vision, though, for there to be more women-owned venues in Portland. And so that does feel important down the line, but I do agree that this is a building block. They don't have to do it all in one scoop. So, yeah.
I was going to ask, what do you guys think is the single biggest piece of red tape that gets in your way or in any entrepreneur's way of building this kind of business in Portland? Any kind of business?
The single investment is huge. I mean, right, if you don't have capital, it's really hard to get started. But there's a lot of money in Portland. I think there is. Philanthropy money and otherwise. I don't think our city is broke. I think we actually have money. So it's really about, I think, meeting the right people. But investment, I think, is a big one.
And I would say mindset. It's kind of what I was addressing earlier. I don't think there's a lack of vision in Portland. Just my time here, we have amazing creative people with amazing ideas. But again, it takes, if you're not walking in the door with that, inheritance, or that network already, how do you take the next step from vision to partnering with people? A lot of it is, how do you convince people of the value, particularly if the approach is a bit unconventional? You see what I mean? And so it's really, again, addressing, or changing the language, and how we approach executing these visions. But I would say mindset. I think people look at Portland, just when they say Portland, I can't tell you how many times it's like you would think someone crapped on our face. It'd be like, Portland, what? And I'm like, if you live here, do you understand how much industry is in Portland? One artist said a powerful lyric on one of my mixtapes. He said, I'm from the birthplace of Nike, damn it. Our footprint is across the world. He said, we leave our footprint across the world. When he said that, I was like, wow. And for me, it was not just about Nike, but it was like our imprint as a city. When I travel, I hear all kinds of Portland influences in other markets, but for some reason, I think it's both an internal belief. I believe we achieve what we believe. So if we believe as a collective community that we're not as valuable as other cities, then guess what? That's what we get. We get the return on that mental investment. And so part of it is, again, having the conversations. I'm preaching to the choir in here because we're all invested, but I'm just saying for those who haven't gotten to a place where they understand that the more we take value in what we have, not what we desire and what we wish, but what we already have here as a city, then I think the world will start seeing that outside of us, and then you'll start getting the influx of people that it will be less harder to say, hey, you should be investing in here. You say, you should be investing in this place. And so I think it's mindset.
I think the biggest hurdle is for LCC and the city for this type of business.
Mindset.
Take it outside.
You know what I mean? Again, it's mindset. How do you convince them? You know what I mean? It's what their perceptions are. And where do our perceptions come from? How we think. You see what I mean? And so, again, but I think part of it is just the advocacy and the continual conversation. And at some point, we're hoping that people that have the same mindsets that we have collectively, like in this room, start being put in positions, in those decision-making positions, where it's less of a trying to convince and it's more like, okay, we got our folks in there, let's go.
We got one in the city now.
Yeah, oh yeah, and we already know what that person is about. So mindset. Anybody else? Yes, in the back.
I was curious to look at that 6-month process.
Mhm.
There were some points that you could offer that were a surprise to you in terms of friction or things that came up for you, and also in terms of maybe curiosity or revelations or maybe, kind of surprises for yourself, both positive and negative.
Yeah. Friction. One exercise that we did, and you guys are probably really familiar with it, is a SWOT analysis, right? Strengths, weaknesses, et cetera, et cetera. And I've done that before in the context of a business, right? Like, it's very like, our strength is very unique. Our weakness is we don't have money, OG1 asks us to do it for ourselves. Like, for you, do a SWOT analysis. And I think that was a point of friction, because one of the weaknesses that I don't like to admit for myself is that there are only 24 hours in a day. And I like to take on as much as possible as I can. So I think the friction within myself was, if you're going to do this, you have to let go of something else to make room for something new. And I think, honestly, for a lot of us, a lot of the women, I think all of us, multi-careers, multi-passions, vision. I think a part of being an entrepreneur, right, is like, you see something and you want to go for it. Like, there's that drive, there's that connection, and then you add an artist on top of that, and you can be in the clouds about it, as well as on the ground. And on the ground, you're literally running as fast as the clouds are moving. So I think that was one, like, both the friction and also a revelation. I was like, okay, Olivia, if we're gonna, I was talking to the realtor, and she was like, so which one of your jobs are you gonna quit? It's like, okay, true, good point. I think another revelation, though, that I had was that there are other women who are willing to collaborate, and oftentimes that's not the narrative. Aspen wants to do a recording studio. One thing that I've learned is really brilliant about venue spaces is making them multi-purpose, right? So like, we have venue spaces that are co-working spaces. We have venue spaces that are, theaters and offices, our theaters and recording studios, and like what it looks like to share that responsibility of carrying the financial pressure. I was like, oh, like, I don't actually have to do Eden as this silo project by itself. Could we put Aspen's recording studio in here? Could we have MusicOregon's A&R business office out of here? And then, like, also that breeds other big ideas that I just can't have on my own. So that was also a revelation. It's like, right. It doesn't, in general, I think in Portland, if we chose not to do venues in a siloed manner, like, how much brilliance that would breed. Like, that's also a really exciting idea.
I just want to shout you out for saying theater correctly.
Which means that there's someone else in here who thinks it's pronounced differently.
Yeah. One of the things, exercises, I think might have been a challenge or eye-opening for the participants was I also had them do a lifestyle budget. because oftentimes people have, because again, the idea is to have a realistic vision. Make sure that your vision is attainable. And so part of it was, okay, well, I need you to do an assessment. I need you to come up with a lifestyle budget. And whatever that budget is does the vision that you have align with it? Because you might have a big vision that it just is not going to finance your lifestyle. So either one or two things is going to happen. Either you have to make adjustments to your vision or you have to make adjustments to your lifestyle where it's streamlined. So if, someone came up with a budget of, hey, my lifestyle, including everything, and I told them to write down everything from how much you want to go out to eat, the kind of car you want to drive, how much gas it's going to cost a week, your health care, taking care of your parents if that's in your budget. If you're going to have kids, the cost of living for kids, what kind of house you want to live in, and what's the cost, what's the actual dollar amount is on there, your utilities, how many vacations do you want to take in a year, what do you want to have in the bank, what do you want to have invested, and on the list went on. I wanted them to be as detailed as possible, and once they came up with that number, then I said, now you have to look at the industry you're trying to be in. Can you make that kind of money? And if not, are your lifestyle goals unrealistic? Or is your vision unrealistic? It's not practical where you can reach that. And sometimes coming up with that, it also exposes, man, I'm wasting money over here. I was spending all this money over here. It has nothing to do with what I say my vision is. So am I willing to be accountable and make the adjustments and say, okay, instead of spending, $300 on these new sneakers, I might need to go ahead and invest that in my business and maybe build my brand up enough where I can go to an apparel company and say, you should be sponsoring me and sending me stuff for free. Again, the realistic strategy, and I only can say that just based off of my own life and how I've had to, that I didn't have to pay for. So again, those kind of conversations that, again, most of the time people are just wanting to talk about what you can put down on black and white, on paper. And I'm saying that particularly with our culture, that's the other thing is our culture is huge on relationship. I don't think these women would have listened to a word I had to say if they didn't feel like they can trust me. And so part of my responsibility is making sure that, one, they felt like they were in a safe space. They could talk about whatever they needed to talk about is real, that I would listen. Not listen to respond, but really listen to hear what was of value to them. Part of the curriculum developed in this, there was a skeleton of a curriculum because I had to make sure that what I was going to be coaching them on was what they needed and not what I thought that they needed, if that makes sense. I needed to make sure that the information that I was dialing in with them was relatable and was of importance to them and not just an agenda that I had. I think you should just be knowing this because I think it's valuable. And so, it was great. I have some lifelong friendships now.
We had a lifelong friendship before the program.
Right.
So you weren't getting out of it.
I know. Yeah, it's a blessing. So, and again, I thank Mirror and MusicOregon for trusting me with the process. Because it is a different approach than usual programs. I really appreciate you trusting me to take the ladies through this process. And I thank the ladies for trusting me with the process as well. So.
And we want to thank the Oregon Community Foundation for their Thriving Entrepreneurs Grant that launched this pilot.
Yeah.
And we continue to seek funding and investment to keep the program going. We don't have any currently, but it's an important program and we hope to keep it going.
There it is.
Thanks, y'all. Feel free to hang out and, enjoy the new year with us. Thank you, OG and Olivia. Thank you.